my fellow panelists, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor for me to speak before you today on the questions of regional leadership and security in a neo-nationalist era focused on Southeast Asia. Let me at the outset say that the success of ASEAN in its existence for 51 years is that we have successfully developed a good habit of dialogue. That's why, as a result, we enjoy relative peace and security. There's no war or conflict between and among the members of ASEAN. Yes, we do have some internal conflicts, but it hasn't developed into an open conflict. So the key words here is dialogue and consensus. To Indonesia, it is a societal values that we highly upheld. Dialogue and consensus is a product or byproduct of the fact that Indonesia is a very diverse nation. We are comprised of more than 300 ethnic groups, each with its own traditions, custom, language, and multi-religions. I said it's a byproduct because understanding of our diversity. I, for example, come from the western part of Java, and in Java alone there are at least 4 major ethnic groups. Each has their own language, traditions. So that's why in our personal communications, we're very careful to consider what our counterpart would feel if I say something insensitive to their culture, their language, their religions. So indirectly, that is the dialogue process. That's why dialogue is, in a way, a very typical Indonesian values. And as foreign policy is meant not only to promote our national interests, but also to project our national values. This is the value, dialogue and consensus is the value that Indonesia projects, has been projecting in ASEAN. You know, ASEAN comprises of 10 nations of great diversity in terms of history, tradition, language, culture, religions. That's why we found, and now we found, together we found that it is an important value of ASEAN as well. You can imagine, ASEAN comprises of 10, but comprising of Indonesia, which is the largest in many ways. In terms of territory, we have about 6 million square kilometers, land and waters. And the largest archipelagic state. On the other hand, Laos is landlocked, which is landlocked, and has about 50 million. Brunei, a small territory, now has about 1 million. So that's why instead of decision making by voting, consensus-based decision making is very useful here to maintain the cohesiveness of ASEAN. ASEAN used to be labeled as the Balkans of Asia because of our great diversity. The region is prone to conflict, but as I have said earlier, we have enjoyed relative peace and security in the past 50 years, 51 years. You would appreciate it better if you compare our region, say, with the Middle East, where there is continuing conflicts. And as we enjoy relative peace and security, we can focus our time, energy, and resources for our economic development. That's why collectively ASEAN is a very dynamic region, and it's now the 6th largest economy in terms of GDP in the world. And as we together move up in the ladder of our ranks, ASEAN, 6 or 7 countries, ASEAN is projected by 2050, 6 or 7 us will be among 25 largest economy in the world. So dialogue and consensus, the good habits of dialogue and consensus in comparisons with sister regional organizations like the South Asian Regional, they call it SAR. Yes, there's no dialogue, effective dialogue, whereby the largest party throws its weight around. Not in ASEAN, because in our own national values or philosophy, to be big and for that matter to lead doesn't mean that we have to be in front of a group. We have in Javanese philosophy, we may lead from behind. Kukuri Handayani. And I think that's the way also Indonesia play within ASEAN. We do not throw our weights around, and consensus basis making, basically we treated all large and small as equal, and in essence of dialogue in the end is listening. Anyone of us who has good concept and good reasonings to convince others may succeed. That's why, while some critics say decision-making by consensus is a slow process, it's ineffective. But I will tell you from my own experience that it was based on consensus that we agreed in 2003 to adopt an ASEAN community concept. Some of the elements were very controversial in the beginning, such as the concept of political and security community, which I initiated. And it was voted. I'm sure Indonesia could easily vote it out by 1 against 10, against 9, I would say. But it was based on consensus that through continuous process of dialogue and reasoning, that in the end, the concept of ASEAN community was well accepted. Likewise, on the notions of promotions of democracy, rule of law, good governance, peaceful resolution of conflicts. I should have said also human rights. Those are controversial core issues within ASEAN. You may read from the configuration of 10 ASEAN countries, which is democratic, half democratic countries, even to the extent of single-party authoritarians. So those are sensitive issues, but again, it's because of this dialogue process, consensus-based, it was accepted. My colleagues, Minister Kassim, knew very well our deliberations on the term of reference of the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights. It was controversial. It was controversial in the beginning because when we deliberated on the ASEAN Charter, in particular in relation to Article 14, which is often labeled as the base enabling provisions for ASEAN to establish an ASEAN Commission on Human Rights. I recall that the ASEAN foreign ministers, it was voted, I would say it was easily voted by 8 against 2, because the Philippines was in favor, but the rest, you know it. But likewise, when Indonesia was alone, at a ministerial meeting chaired by Minister Kassi, Indonesia didn't agree on the term of reference, which in our view was imbalance between the promotion functions and the protections. But Indonesia later on joined the consensus because the other members agreed that in the review process, 5 years after, we strive to balance these two mandates of the commissions. It turned out not that way. Likewise, in dealing with crucial issues, other crucial issues in ASEAN, in the paper provided by secretariats, difficult issue like post-Nargis disaster, natural disaster in 2008 in Myanmar, Irrawaddy Delta. In fact, ASEAN was sandwiched between Myanmar military junta positions, which rejected the offer of aid from the international community, and ASEAN was blamed by the international community because Myanmar is an ASEAN member. And they complained what ASEAN do. In fact, they concluded ASEAN hasn't done enough to convince Myanmar to accept the offer of humanitarian aid. Perhaps for you to understand, and now it can be told, it was a special meeting of ASEAN foreign ministers in Singapore. It was chaired by Singapore Foreign Minister George Yeo. 1 hour before the meeting, I met him and I said, "By George, how are you going to deal with this difficult issue? ASEAN is sandwiched. ASEAN is also condemned, not only Myanmar." And he said pessimistically, "So what we can do, Pakistan, if any offer or suggestion from ASEAN will be simply rejected by Myanmar?" And I said, "Not me, you will see. Because for Indonesia, you cannot accept the fact that peoples in the field were suffering, growing casualties, those died and those need help, not only medicine, shelter, while the regime rejected. In fact, we all cannot accept this. That's why I said, you will see." So knowing that the chairman was very pessimistic about this, any solutions, so I have idea. I didn't tell the chair, but I called my president. I said, "The meeting most likely will not produce anything, and we all in ASEAN would be in a very difficult situation." So I have an idea to offer Myanmar 3 options. Number 1, for Myanmar to emulate what Indonesia did in relation to the earthquake and tsunami that occurred in December 2004 in Aceh, in which Indonesia opened Aceh wide for anyone, individuals, non-governmental organizations, UN members, and other international organizations. Aceh was still in conflict, so we allowed even armed forces from many countries to come with light arms, come in military aircrafts, in naval vessels, Air Force, military cargo planes. They would complain at home. They said that these armed forces from abroad violates Indonesian national sovereignty. a strong sense, of neo-nationalism. And I said, they were there in Aceh to help our people, and by our consent. So there's no question of sovereignty. Like in the case of Myanmar, which there questions, that the sovereignty would be violated. And I said that the case of Aceh, post-tsunami was a successful case during the emergency phase. Our people have good access to medicine, to shelter, but also the successful ensuing process of rehabilitation and reconstructions. But I said at that meeting that knowing you, the military junta has been isolating themselves for 60 years, so can they suddenly open, make Myanmar open wide to the international community? I said, I don't recommend you to consider this option number 2. Option number 1. Option number 2 is to trust ASEAN on what is then called ASEAN-led mechanism. ASEAN was playing in between Myanmar and the international community. And this is the options that I recommend Myanmar to take. Number 3 is for Myanmar to do nothing. Meaning, and I ask Myanmar to question itself, what's the purpose of Myanmar joining ASEAN? If not only in relation to the lack of democracy and gross violation of human rights, ASEAN was implicated. Now on the very humanitarian problems of Myanmar, ASEAN was also implicated. So, ask yourself, what is the purpose of you joining ASEAN if only you create problems to ASEAN? But don't forget, 9 of us would also question ourselves. What is the benefits of 9 of us to have you? And then my counterpart, the Foreign Minister of Myanmar, said, of those 3 options, I would personally agree on the option number 2, meaning ASEAN mechanism that Pak Hassan recommended. And I changed him. Is it you personally or the government? Then he asked the chairman to leave the room for 5 to 10 minutes to call Yangon, and he returned by saying, my government has agreed. And that's why Dr. Surin, late Dr. Surin said, had not because of soft ultimatum that I made, there would be no another solution. But in reflections, this is the way we discuss in ASEAN. You may say, oh, ASEAN is a forum of nice talk. No, not necessarily. But inside we can be discussing in such an environment, heated discussions, but friendly, of course. And that's allowed us, when we are facing with difficult problems, that we agree by consensus. In the case of Maldives, of course Indonesia has considerable experience with the major, largest disaster in the world. That's why we seconded 2 of our directors in dealing with the rehabilitation and the construction of Aceh through the process of emergency phase and rehabs and recons in Rawadi Delta. So that's a kind of not interfering. How can I say an article? You feel that you are interfered by your fellow ASEAN. As fellow members, it is part of our sense of community. Now it's called ASEAN feeling, that we wish to know what is happening to you and what way we and the rest of ASEAN can be of help. That's why I often said that in ASEAN, notion of non-interference in domestic affairs was unnecessarily overvalued. I call excessive interpretations of principle of non-interference, but instead the family-based approach that we should be more open to each other, including to help each other. That's more or less the success of ASEAN. Yes, you may have heard and perhaps the question of centrality, of lack of unity, but compared to the European Union, which much in many terms of process of their integration, they reached the level of union. But look, the situation of today. I think EU has experienced much worse division moment. That was extreme is Brexit. But also, I know very well on the division between Central and South, and Central and Eastern Europe. But as ASEAN is not only to manage the internal process of integration, ASEAN has been an active promoter of in larger regions, in particular in East Asia and the Asia Pacific. Again, based on a dialogue, on an ASEAN +1, ASEAN +3, ASEAN +6. That's why numerous initiatives in the larger East Asia and the Asia Pacific was basically in the ASEAN-led process. It's also called ASEAN in the driving seat. Of course, we wish to see Northeast Asia will be a good counterpart in that larger process of community building. But we regret to see that among those powerful neighbors, China, Japan, and South Korea, practically they didn't agree on anything with regard to political and security. I think primarily because of the unsettled legacies of their past. Second World War as well as the Korean War. That's why they tend to rely on ASEAN. That's why it was wrong to assume that regional economic partnerships, ASEAN, often labeled as China-led. No, it's not China-led, it's an ASEAN-led process. I think this regional economic partnerships agreement will be concluded by end of this year, hopefully. So, begin with the dialogue, consensus, and inclusiveness, which is a very democratic process. Professor Amartya Sen defined democracy as a continuous process of dialogue and public listening. Underline, dialogue and public listening on matters of public interest. I think that's democratic process happened in ASEAN. That in the world in this way, I think this approach would be very useful, as we have proven in ASEAN, we have proven hopefully in the larger East Asia and the Asia Pacific region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hassan. As always, your story is so full of rich of lessons and implications. I'm sure everybody knows a lot of economic side of ASEAN, but I think Hassan has told a very powerful narrative about how political initiative and political ideas that could make a big difference here. And of course, we know the kind of IR analysis being pessimistic on the kind of structural understanding. But if we have this stories from Hassan, we know the more promising side and a more long-term fundamental aspect of this dialogue and consensus, how that could create a difference in this region. Thank you very much, Hassan. And Mr. Kasim, floor.
Of a way that leads to this kind of narrow nationalism. In Europe, in fact, the rise of populisms and for that matter, narrow nationalisms was in response, and for that matter, political parties exploits a sense of fear against fear of the influx of migrants, of Islam, of many other things, which in essence also in contradiction with the very European values, which is democracy, respect for human rights, and humanitarian principles. In the US, President Trump, during his campaign in 2015, exploit the sense of fear against globalization, free market, Wall Street, the elite, meaning political parties, Capitol Hill, and the White House. I don't think that the policy that is developed by exploiting fear, which in essence highly emotional, would survive long. In Europe, we have been witnessing that this populism has somewhat declined, but likewise, I don't think in the US, Trump would survive in the upcoming election, 2020. At least my hope, I don't know how to judge it, but to me, the policy which is based on the exploitation of fear, emotional in nature and not rational, would not survive long. I think, as I said earlier, that we have witnessed the development of the wrong kind of nationalisms. I would cite the when late President Sukarno in 1945 introduced this concept of national philosophy, state philosophy. He said nationalism must be developed in the hotbed, perhaps wrong term, in the cradle of internationalisms. I think that is somewhat missing. So, to me, nationalism is not necessarily bad. It can be good force. But the current narrow nationalism is wrong because it is contrary to the sense of, in fact, growing internationalism, which is the character of our age. Thank you.
Very much. Dr. Shaishi?
Well, let me just mention three things. One is, of course, it depends on the economic performance as well as the gap is either widening or shrinking in the coming years. For now, I mean, it's quite clear that many political leaders play on the question of income gap. I mean, President Duterte in the Philippines is playing on middle class anxiety about lower class people. And in Indonesia, in the Jakarta gubernatorial election, Anies Baswedan, the current governor, really successfully played on the kind of, dissatisfaction of lower classes as well as lower middle classes about the Jakarta middle elite, and played with identity politics. So clearly, I agree with Mr. Kassim that neo-national sort of nationalism on the rise. At the same time, and also I would say, and this is the second point, we might get into a big storm in the coming years. And this is more to do with macroeconomics. But these days I'm getting increasingly worried about whether the next very serious economic crisis might start somewhere in emerging countries. Because many countries have accumulated huge amount of debt, especially by state-owned corporations. And this really worries me. So, short term, yes, this nationalist forces might become even stronger and create sort of many problems. Longer term, I don't think that the forces of globalization cannot be stopped because it is driven by technology. And generally speaking, it really creates more wealth and better life for a lot of people. So the question, and actually this is a challenge both for government technocrats as well as social scientists, is how to address these challenges of economic growth as well as social inequality, and how to make sure that not only just economic growth and globalization, but also the fruit of growth would be more evenly distributed, so that this kind of issue wouldn't wreck our fiscal system.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite the second speaker,
give rise to the national sense of nationalism in Europe. It's very much different than in Asia. I would say key elements in Europe that give rise to nationalisms was and still is the influx of great number of migrants. In 2015, 1.2 million migrants from North Africa and the Middle East flux to Europe, and the fortress of Europe just developed under the Schengen Treaty practically collapsed. But also the presence of extremist violence extremism in Europe create a great sense of anti-Islam, Islamophobia. Of course, difficulties, economic difficulties in different parts of Europe. The Eurozone crisis in South Europe, Greece, France, Greece, Portugal and Spain, which somewhat contagious because of the high debt to GDP ratio in many countries of Europe, including in Italy. We don't have that in Asia. At least in a country that I know best, and I claim so, Indonesia. The recent rise of identity politics was quite clear during the election of governor of Jakarta, and it brought the incumbent state-time candidates, governor candidate Ahok, we call it Basuki Cahayapurnama, ended the competitions, the race, by heading to jail. Actually, this is not an ethnic identity politics, but rather religious-based identity politics. In terms of his performance as governor, as a governor, 74% of the population of voters in Jakarta regarded Ahok, the incumbent, as a high performance. You can imagine 74% acceptance, excellent performance as governor. The problem with this governor was not identity politics originally. It was simply because of Ahok, meaning his mouth was his title. And that was cleverly exploited by the Islamists that in the end Ahok was defeated in direct elections. So, but the counterforce, knowing Indonesia as a country of great plurality, diverse country. We have a strong national motto, unity and diversity. That's what the counter force. That's why counter rallies against this tendency of identity politics. It's a new element, in fact, because as Indonesia has 228 million Muslims out of 265 millions of Indonesian population. I would say that Indonesian Islam is moderate, very moderate. But there is a new influence of political Islam from the Middle East, namely the Wahhabism of Saudi Arabia, but also Islamic political Islam from Muslim Brotherhood or Ikhwanul Muslimin of Egypt. So, but likewise, unlike in Europe or perhaps in the US, there is no great sense of deprecations that give rise to this sense of nationalism. our economic performance is good, and in the past 5 years, under President Jokowi, we enjoyed a relative good growth of 5.1, 5.2% annually, likewise in previous governments. So, and the level of satisfaction, yesterday a survey by independent pollster was released. The current government enjoyed 72% of satisfactions from as reflected by the survey. So, and interestingly, perhaps in a counter force again, a sense of identity politics, which clearly occurred during the governor election. Now there is a general agreement among political parties, among candidates, that we will not go back to this, will stop this identity politics, including not exploiting Islam, because in Indonesia, well, Islam is a religion of majority. But in 1945, our founding fathers decided Indonesia is not a secular state where there is strict divisions between state and church or state and mosque. But in Indonesia, states has the obligation to promote religious life. So we took a middle path. That's why, in a way, Islam and Muslim, although the majority, are well accommodated in state's life. So that's the optimistic side. When we talk about the science phenomena of identity politics, in particular, of the exploitations of religious sentiments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shaishi.
Let me be very brief.
ASEAN's lack of unity and cohesion. In fact, for the first time, it was clearly visible during the 2012 ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting in Cambodia, where for the first time in the history of ASEAN was not able to come up with a foreign minister's final statement because of the issue of South China Sea. It was clearly ASEAN was divided, and that's why skepticism around ASEAN unity, ASEAN cohesion, and ASEAN centrality for that matter. But if we compare, as said earlier, compare the European Union, which has been developed 10 years earlier, since the Rome Treaty of 1957, and reached the level not only community but unions, there was greater divisions among European countries or bloc of countries. Well, Europe has a more or less common defense policy, common foreign policy. No, ASEAN is not a supranational. We have different foreign policy. Each country has different foreign policy. That's why, to me, yes, there was at one point divisions, lack of cohesion and centrality. I agree to what my colleague Ms. Kassi said, because of the influence of others. Outside power of ASEAN. I think it's important that the region, East Asia, to make more effective the existing process of cooperations, of integrations towards the creations of East Asian community. There's so much talk about now Indo-Pacific. United States, Europe, Japan, Indonesia, while to me it was not quite clear what do they mean by Indo-Pacific. So why should we create a new wheel while there is a wheel already? Don't reinvent a new wheel, maximize the East Asia Summit, which is a forum at the leaders level, that's why I call it summit, comprising of, used to be 16, later on, since 2011, 11, President of not only 10 ASEAN, plus 6 Japan, Korea, China, Australia, India, but also United States and Russia. So this is a very powerful group, and I think what was the weakness in the process since 2005 was that, like the process of integration in Southeast Asia before, there was an imbalances, and they keep talking about economic and forgetting the political and security aspects of cooperation. That's why South China Sea conflict. And it was in the midst of tension, the midst of conflict, then we began to discuss the code of conduct. Code of conduct should be prepared in anticipation of future conflict. That's why the difficulties that we had. We agreed to develop code of conduct in 2011, and until today, we only agreed, ASEAN and China, on the framework, not the means, but the framework of code of conduct. So, of course, we wish to see that the biggest party in these groupings should exercise wise leadership and not easily flexing its muscle in dealing with conflict. In other words, there was no good habit of dialogue, again, my prime thesis. And second, that the whole process of cooperation or integration of community buildings is unbalanced. Some refer to this as the Asian paradox. Thank you.
Can I just say, well, I don't know whether